Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for attending our February webinar. So I think we've given people enough time, and I'm conscious of time, so we'll just get started. So in this month's session, we're going to cover the accelerators. We've got a program around this. I'll tell you what an accelerator is, but more specifically, this month we're going to look at how you can use these to help, I suppose, gain insight into the financial performance of your business. So I'm going to run through a couple of slides, basically just walking through who we are, giving a little bit of background information on the accelerators themselves, and then we'll cut to the demo. So let me just move my slides on. Okay, so who are ProStrategy? So ProStrategy, you know, we've been around for over 30 years. We've got a team, a growing team of 65 plus. I think we're nearly at 70 at the moment. We've got a few new hires. But basically, there's three kind of core aspects to our business. There's the ERP and customer engagement, which includes CRM, data and analytics, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, and then enterprise performance management. And I guess what gives us an advantage in this space is the fact that we have, you know, Dynamics 365, NAV, Business Central, and CRM teams co-located with our analytics teams. It means we have very good insight into, I suppose, how these ERP and CRM systems work. So, you know, it puts us in a strong position to kind of work with those guys, work with customers in that space and develop analytics capability. And that's what we're going to look at today. So, you know, I'm not going to drain this, but just move on to the next one. So in terms of some of our customers, so here's a selection of some of our customers. You can see there's kind of, you know, little to large across different industries, you know, banking, insurance, hospitality, retail, so on and so forth. A number of the customers where we've deployed Power BI solutions, you might see one or two of them here is Unilever. So for sales, they have it. Sam McCauley have the full suite of the analytics accelerators, which you'll see in a moment. And we've plenty of other customers in here who are sitting in Cognos and on the Microsoft Power BI stack as well. So in terms of what are accelerators, these are pre-built packages that we've been working on for a number of years, and they plug into NAV. So out of the box, you get a number of reports and dashboards. They've been designed kind of, I suppose, working in partnership with customers and evolving as we get feedback from existing and new customers as well, and we extend the capability. They can be easily extended to suit the kind of nuances of every business, you know, so pretty standard out of the box, but extended based on maybe customizations you've made to an item card or a custom card or whatever in NAV, but also depending on maybe a variant business process as well. It's presented typically as an accelerator because it's quite standard. And that accelerator includes, you know, the hosting of the SQL database, support time, and also upgrades to the analytics capability or the analytics model underneath it. So that as we kind of develop and mature content and it becomes more sophisticated, you know, ourselves are working with customers. You guys get the benefit of that. Sorry, my phone is ringing there. Let me just put that on silence. And typically it's presented as, from I suppose, pricing-wise, it's a sliding scale. So the accelerators are broken up into a number of different accelerators across these areas: supply chain, sales, and finance. Operations tends to come with or sit on top of all of the others. It can be driven out of any one of them, but usually it's kind of when they all come together. So, you know, we have a number of customers. I suppose the biggest number of customers we have are on sales. The next biggest number is in the supply chain space. The finance is our newest product, and we have a number of customers using that. But it seems to be the one with the highest level of interest so far, which is kind of really interesting. So from a demo perspective, what we're going to look at today is we're going to look specifically at the P&L and the accounts receivable. And I think that will give you a very good sense for the product Accounts payable is really just the opposite to accounts receivable, and balance sheet will be kind of very similar to P&L too.
Sorry, Owen.
Yes.
Sorry, can I interrupt there? I believe some people may be experiencing some issues with seeing the slides. Would that be correct from some people?
Yeah, I can see the slides.
Okay, hold on.
Antoine Navarro here, I can see the slides.
All right, okay. Hold on a second. I apologize for that. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Right.
Yep, that works.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the microwave version of everything I just talked about, but with the slides. Right. These are the areas that we work in. You know, I talked about the size of the team. It's the Microsoft Dynamics space. Analytics typically over that space coming from the Power Platform, which is your Microsoft Azure and Power BI. And then within the enterprise performance space, heavily focused, really kind of driving that using IBM and IBM Cognos Analytics. You know, all of these are being used to deliver capability to, you know, drive things like streamlined and automated processes. This is a really new area, not one to cover today, but love to cover another stage around Power Apps and workflow automation. It's probably one of the fastest growing spaces. Personalized customer interactions through CRM. And then I suppose getting to the heart of what we want to talk about today, you know, enhanced financial management and decision optimization using analytics to drive that. The accelerators themselves, why is this thing not forwarding? I've talked about the customers. You can see the slide. I'm not going to get into that right now. I just want to plug into, I want to get to the accelerators and the demo itself, so I'm conscious of time. So hopefully everyone understood when I talked about this slide earlier, what I was talking about, you know, out of the box, plug and play. It kind of sits into NAV, and because it's plug and play, it means that to set up a typical sales or finance or supply chain accelerator without customization, so out of the box, is somewhere in the region of 4 days. I mean, if you were to build this from scratch with the level of modeling and the number of reports and dashboards that were in there, you could easily be talking 25 to 35 days. No problem whatsoever. So from that perspective, you get a very, very quick turnaround and a high return on investment. The accelerators themselves sit across these areas: supply chain, sales, and finance. And each of these has, I suppose, a deeper dive into, you know, if we look at sales, your customer analytics. Who are your customers? Which segments do they sit in? What do they buy? What are they buying more of? What are they buying less of? And who's not buying any more? So who are you at risk of losing? So that's very, very powerful from that perspective. Finance, I already mentioned, we're going to talk about the P&L mainly and the AR from a demo perspective. But really, this is about understanding, you know, what are the drivers of, I suppose, where's your revenue coming from a revenue perspective, and what are the drivers of your expenses? You know, so a lot of industries that we support, you know, if you look at the retail space like Sam Macaulay, or we've a really nice project going on at the moment with Burger King, it's very heavily focused on labor, you know, because labor is probably one of the single biggest influencers of expense. Once you take the purchase price out of products, it's services and labor. So understanding that and how you can optimize that, and that can be driven out of either the sales or the finance spaces. Fraud detection is kind of highlighted here because it's probably more relevant to the retail space. But when you combine all of this information together, customer information, supply chain information, and financial data, you can start to really drill into anomalies within your data. So, for example, let me give you a statistic, and this is very conservative. Within the retail space, 2%, at least 2% of revenue is lost through shrinkage. And over 40% of shrinkage is as a direct result of staff theft. Now, they are conservative numbers, but it's very, very significant when you look at it. And this isn't just in the retail space, it's in all spaces. And this can come in many different forms. This can be through discounting, this can be through supply chain items, you know, being checked in, not invoiced, and going missing out the back door. there's all manner of ways that this can kind of rise up. So it's using all of the analytics at your disposal to kind of look for outliers, you know, and figure out what's kind of impacting your business. So in terms of how do you set up an accelerator, it's pretty quick. It's a few days, as I mentioned earlier. We create an Azure environment. We install the SQL databases and we map it to your instance of NAV. We set up the Power BI environment, the workspaces and the reports. As I said, this is all out of the box. It's really the deployment exercise. That typically, those first 3 steps, normally somewhere in the region of 4 days, unless there's some anomalies in your kind of setup. And then really anything after that is sort of client customization and user acceptance testing. So how does the accelerator work? As I said earlier, we plug into NAV, we host it within our environment. Most businesses, there's not a problem unless your data is enormous, and we have very, very few, you know, enormous is like billions of records, not millions. You know, there might be some extra cost attached to the hosting then, but that typically isn't the case with most customers who fall into the analytics space. We ingest your data, it's staged up. We don't transform anything at this point in time, and that's really important from a lineage perspective, because if we, you know, if you discover an anomaly, you can quickly root out the raw data without having to go back to your kind of live nav. We model it and we expose it to Power BI. The modeling is really important, and I'm going to use a sales model, even though I know we're talking about finance, but I think everyone understands this and it's kind of simpler from a diagrammatic perspective. If we look at all of the data we would need out of NAV to get to sales, you're probably talking about order tables, invoiced orders, returned orders, credit memos. There's a lot of complexity just to get to sales and just to get to margin. So we put a lot of focus on, you know, and we've invested heavily in creating these simplified models. So for this model, which is the sales one, you can measure everything pretty much about your business from a sales perspective. The performance of individuals against budgets, the performance of customers, all the stuff I talked about earlier, over time, the performance of products. How are new products doing? How are older products doing? Where have we got challenges from a margin or a growth perspective? I mean, this model will allow you pretty much run your business from a sales perspective, and it's pretty simple. But to get it to this simple state requires work. But that's the type of thing that you get with the accelerators. From a finance perspective, these are the tables, the dimensions and the facts that we put into the model. If there's anything not included here, it's relatively easy to add it into the mix. But typically, you know, the GL model, which is the top one, is where we get the P&L and the balance sheet. And then we've the accounts receivable model and the accounts payable model. I know I'm flying through this. Any questions so far? Okay. This is what an actual finance model looks like. So you've kind of got your ledger, the hierarchies. If it was retail, you might have stores. That could be some other global dimension, but it's designed to split out by the regular global dimensions. And then looking at everything over time by cost center, and with the ability to drill into accounts starting at the top level and going right down to the bottom level. What we discovered as we worked with customers as well was that a number of customers, whilst they have a chart of accounts in NAV, that often isn't how they want to look at their business. So we designed a system where you can maintain like a parallel or alternate chart of accounts in a spreadsheet, in a Teams folder, and a SharePoint folder. So you have the option of using that customized one, which might be like a management version of accounts, versus the formal chart of accounts that you've originally set up in NAV. Sometimes there could be other reasons for that. When NAV was set up originally, maybe it didn't take into account some of the complexity that now exists in your organization, and it's too hard to unwind that. So it gives you a very easy sort of way of maintaining a separate hierarchy. These are all the kind of typical areas that are covered in it. And what I'm going to do now is hand over to John Doherty, who's actually going to present this. So just let me grab him from the list. There we go, and make him a presenter. And I do apologize for the issue at the beginning or it wasn't actually sharing the slides, or they weren't sharing properly. John, have you got the presentation rights?
Yep. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so as Owen mentioned, we're going to start with the profit and loss. So I suppose the profit and loss is a critical report when you're analysing how your business is performing. However, it can be very time consuming to prepare. So one of the benefits of the P&L Accelerator is it can be run at any time to provide a real-time view of your financials. And again, as Owen said, this can be configured using the standard chart of accounts in NAV, or if you don't use them for reporting purposes, we can configure using a custom hierarchy, which can be easily maintained in Teams and updated, and reduces an awful lot of time as regards creating new accounts in NAV and kind of migrating everything across. We found customers can speed up the kind of process maintaining in Teams, and they can automatically refresh and get again a real-time view of their P&L. So this report is actually using the custom hierarchy. So I'll just start a demo what the actual report looks like and how you kind of use it to do your analysis. So straight off, the main difference than your typical P&L, if you're looking at a board pack, is it's not static. So straight away we can switch between versus budget versus last year. Again, you can easily select back your financial year and view your kind of performance and how it was trending over time. And there's a number of custom KPIs you can add here to each kind of, I would say, report tab. And again, everything is kind of dynamic. So if we just want to look at focusing gross margin retail and gross margin RX, straight away you'll see things get updated here. Or if we want to look at a particular month and see how our KPIs are performing, again, everything will be updated and recalculated as you work. Again, it's once you've configured this, it's very easy to break it out by month. For the purposes of this demo, we're looking at a retail P&L. And again, you can drill right down and see how the individual stores are performing and how everything updates based on your selections. A really kind of powerful plugin with Power BI is if you're preparing this for a management meeting, you can do your various analysis, focus right into the certain cost centers you're interested in, and you can export all of this to PowerPoint. And again, the time saving there is huge. So again, it's just broken out by category. We've got a few audit tabs, so you can actually see if there's any accounts that you're not reporting on that need to be picked up. But the real benefit is when you start to kind of break out tabs and do additional analysis. So we've got a number of KPIs here, again, specific to retail, but these can be customized for any company. And it's just, I suppose, what management are interested in. We have a number of CFO tabs then. This is your kind of typical, people will be a lot more used to this P&L layout. This is just a kind of a printable version of your P&L versus budget versus prior year. But again, it's all dynamic and it updates based on your selections. Again, some more kind of CFO analysis tabs. What's your retail versus RX revenue, and again, margin. I won't spend too long on each tab, but it just gives you a quick overview as to areas you really need to focus into. So you can see head office here is way above the curve. And it allows you to drill in and find out what's causing those increases. Again, we've just got department, RX versus retail. And the benefit of Power BI is you can right click here and see why this distribution is different. And it'll actually look at your underlying data and give you reasons as to what's driving the increase or decrease. So here we can see whatever our store in Waterford is responsible for 58% of that increase. And again, you could analyze the increase here as well, etc. So I suppose this is another kind of powerful visual. Straight away, it identifies stores that are performing very well, and again highlights underperforming stores. So again, from a kind of a CFO management point of view, it allows you to focus in very quickly. And we have a number of other tabs like that. margin erosion is obviously very important. Where are we losing money through shrinkage? And again, you can focus right in on each cost center and period. So you can see the flexibility it allows is a lot more than just viewing kind of static P&L figures. They could take 5 to 6 hours to run if you're using jet reports or whatever.
And I think John may have mentioned this at the start, and thanks, John, is we have a couple of customers in this space where they have a near real-time requirement. So the actual database in Azure is updating maybe on a 15-minute cycle. And then you can update the Power BI piece on demand, which means if you're getting ready, say, for a board meeting and you have a board pack that you want to export to PowerPoint, you know, you could post a journal entry or an accrual at the last minute. Just hang on for that kind of 15-minute or 10-minute catch-up, whatever you need it to be. Refresh your data set and print out your board pack. You know, and what we're hearing from customers who are using this is, you know, and if I take Sam McCauley, who are an example of this, they're growing their business from 30 to 100 stores over a number of years. And one of the drivers for them in this space is by having all of this automated and near real time as appropriate, as they grow their business and grow the numbers of stores, they don't need to grow the headcount in a corresponding manner because they've become very, very operationally efficient in this space. Similarly, we have customers where maybe there was a period to close that was taking, you know, 8 to 12 days, and now it takes a day or less. So there's lots and lots of gains to be had by automating all of this type of stuff, even just as a return on investment from a removal of redundant activity. Thanks, John.
Yeah, right down to the time savings. I mean, as we discussed, so you've done your analysis, you've kind of made your selections on each tab. It's as simple as going export to PDF or export to PowerPoint, and you've got your printout there. I mean, obviously, if you're to do that report with screenshots and whatever, you could be half a day preparing a management pack. So that's a quick overview of the P&L. I'll switch briefly to our accounts receivable. Again, sorry, where am I? So this is referencing the accounts receivable tables in NAV. It's very useful, especially for your credit control department, to keep track of all creditors, what they owe, how long they've owed it, and how are they trending over time. So the first tab of this is the management dashboard. We've created buckets based on how many days have elapsed between current date and the application date. So you can see we've got 30 to 60 days, 60 to 90 days, and 120 days. And again, everything is dynamic and it'll update. So these metrics up top are very important. This is your overall debt, your debtor days. So debtor days are a very useful calculation. So it's the number of days it will take based on the last 6 months of sales to clear the balance. So you'd want this to be trending down. So obviously we can see there's a slight increase between debtor days this month and last month. And again, we've got our 6-month trend. So in general, it's trending down, bar the kind of anomaly of last month. Again, we've got your top 10 kind of customers by what they owe.
And sorry, John, just
how long they've owed for you.
Typically, debtor days is actually done on a 12-month basis. But in this particular example, it's just been done for 12, but that's completely configurable. And
yeah, it's all customizable. And again, I think we did it just on this demo because the customer only had 6 months of data, or they wanted to view their sales over 6 months versus a year. But again, it can be configured to quarterly or whatever your business requires. Again, a very useful feature here is when you track back over months, you can see your history will actually update. What was your debt? How much did you owe over time? And again, you can kind of see how everyone's trending. So that's very powerful.
And yeah, I'm just sorry to interject again on this, John. That's actually a really good feature of this, because one of the challenges we had when we started this was you could see your overall trend in terms of age debt month over month. But what was hard initially was, and we had to spend a bit of time working this out, was, well, what's the profile of my 60 to 90 day bucket look like over time? Because if I look at history today, I'm only seeing the 60 to 90 day today. I can't go back 2 months easily and see what it looked like 2 months ago unless I actually had an extract from 2 months ago. Whereas what we've designed in here is a logic that will actually allow you profile the shape of your debt over time, so you can see, okay, my age debt might not be changing at an overall level, but actually I might have debt moving from 30 to 60 days into 60 to 90 or into 90 to 120. So the structure of my debt is actually materially worse, even though the overall debt might stay the same. And this allows you to look at that as well.
So that's your typical overview tab. Again, kind of for the workings tab, we find credit control departments find this a lot more useful. So here you've got all your customers again, but you can drill right in and get a profile of an actual customer, so you can see the most recent orders. But a very useful feature here is we've connected this up to the comment section in NAV, so you can see the most recent comment is contact the customer on the 22nd of the 2nd, will settle next month. So again, this just reduces time of we'll say numerous people chasing the same customer, and again just improves efficiency across your departments. Got your customer summary, and again this can be changed by posting group, but it just highlights who you should start chasing first, and it breaks out how much they owe you by, again, the buckets we've described in the management tab. And again, everything is customizable and dynamic. So from here you can drill right into the customer profile, and that just sees how they're trending over time, what's their balance, what's their sales, and what's their repayments. You can obviously see this beginning to become a problematic customer. Sales are going down, but the debt is still rising. And again, we've got our validation tab, and this is another customizable KPI report that's broken out by kind of customer numbers and groups, and it just shows the number of returning customers and the actual balance over time. So I'll quickly flick on to the balance sheet just to show one additional feature. So the balance sheet looks a lot more typical. Again, it's driven off one of the custom hierarchies. But what we've done here is we've also added the ability to drill right into the different ledgers. So here, if you want to see what your fixed assets are like over time, you can drill right in and you can actually see the postings to the different ledgers. And again, we've done the same for the creditor subledger and the debtor subledger. So it's just another useful feature when you're kind of investigating where the increases or decreases are coming from. So I suppose we're probably just out of time, so I'll pass it back to you for questions.
Brilliant, thanks, John. That's great. Thanks very much for that. So that's, despite my cock up at the beginning of the meeting and not sharing the slides properly, we did actually get through it, but I think probably John was sacrificed a little bit on the timing front. Does anybody have any questions for us or anything they'd like to know about this?
Yeah, I have a quick question for you guys. How long would it take to deploy this solution? I believe it's an out-of-the-box solution. So from start to finish, how long would it take to install this Azure platform and have these reports up and running?
So normally, if sales is about 4 days with no customization, finance is probably going to take a couple of days longer because we'd have to sit down and just decode, understand your global dimensions and stuff like that. But John, I would say out of the box for finance, somewhere between 4 and 6 days.
Yeah, again, if you kind of take 2 days for setting up Azure and whatnot, that can be reused if you have the finance module. But I'd say maybe 3 to 4 days generally. Again, if you're using a custom hierarchy, there's about a half day there just to show you how that's set up and how to maintain it.
So I think it's probably safe to say somewhere in the region of 4 to 6 days would have you up and running with sort of light customization and just having it fine-tuned to your own business.
Okay, that's very good. Sorry, I have another question. This Azure platform, can it hold past data? Is it a cube in effect where you can store data in it?
Yeah, so it's a SQL database, and so we would read in data from NAV, and we will take whatever data is available. So if you have 2 years or 5 years or 6 years or whatever, we just take it all in.
And I'm sure it can. Yeah. Can it handle multi-source of data? For example, in our business, we have the sales somewhere, but because we are a retail business, we're capturing footfall somewhere else. Customers have cameras calculating. Yeah.
Yeah, you can, absolutely. So if I take, say, the Sam Macaulay example, right? So they would have, when I talked about the accelerators earlier, actually, sorry, who's speaking, please?
Antoine Barouya.
Antoine,
Ladies.
thank you.
Yes.
So Macaulay's would have they would have the supply chain, the sales, and the finance. That data is typically coming from NAV. The sales data is augmented by till data, which is kind of sitting next to NAV. And then also there are other data sources that are ingested in as well. Footfall is a key data source in the retail space, so you can start to do conversion metrics, and you can bring anything else. Like in theory, one of the things we're working on as a concept with Macaulay, and you might be interested in this, is bringing CSO data in here as well. So if you have a growth strategy and you want to know, well, where am I going to put my next store? And then you have access to CSO data, you can say, well, this is the performance of my stores in towns or villages or cities with this demographic profile, and there is nobody in this other town that has a really good profile, so that's where we should put our next store. And that's one of the reasons we encourage and we advocate the use of the SQL, because for two reasons. One is it allows us grow outside of NAV and bring other data in, but also Azure has a lot of machine learning and sophisticated AI capability that once you do this as a first step, you can become more sophisticated and bring in, I suppose, a higher level of analytics that Azure and Power BI open the door to.
Yeah, just on that, there's over 1,000 custom connectors ready to go to connect to various APIs and different sources. SAP connectors, SSRS, or so it's very useful that way.
Yeah, like so. If I answer even in a little bit more detail with the Burger King implementation, they don't actually have NAV. They use Great Plains for finance, which is similar to NAV, but it's more prevalent in the United States. Then they have a separate till system, and they have a separate system for their labor hours. So it's all coming from different systems, but being brought together in the model, and then I suppose surfaced up and visualized using Power BI.
Very good. Okay, thanks for
questions from anyone? Antoine, would you like a follow-up call on this?
No, thank you. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you on this. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for your time. Have a good day, and we'll catch you next month for the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.